Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. Once on the Discovery Channel, I watched a very bizarre episode about the guy who was studying crocodiles. And his duty was to catch crocodile, make him empty their stomach and see what he ate. The birds, tortoises, whatever. And the guy was so excited about this role he was playing in the world science. He said, I just can't wait. It's so much fun. I love it to see what the crocodile ate. And so I invented an occupation for myself, most equally bizarre as that one. I read literature about Chicago, and I find places which were mentioned in these novels or stories, and I go there and I look at them. And it's so interesting to me. I just feel so excited, like this guy, once he finds a rare bird in the crocodile's stomach. I think everybody went to Marshall Fields at one point in their lives in Chicago, because it's the place you just cannot miss. And recently I read a book called What the Lady Wants by Renee Rosen, and she describes the relationship between Marshall Field and the love of his life, Delia Cato. He met her when she was 17, but he was already a married man with children. They met at the wedding of Bertha Palmer in 1871, right before the Great Fire of Chicago. And she fell in love with him right away. And here starts their torture, their mutual love for more than 30 years, next to each other, through the history of this amazing place, which was at first a village with stinky onions and dirt along the State Street. But then it gradually, especially after the fire, started catching this energy and started developing. The skyscrapers started rising, and by 1888 we had already 4 supermarkets. The first city in the United States which had 4 supermarkets like that. And the greatest role in the supermarket business you can easily give to Marshall Field, who had a particular talent, who came to Chicago because of its strategic position, just like Potter Palmer. They saw that the city is in the middle of the country, and it's on the lake, it's close to the rivers. They saw the potential right away. Marshall Field came to Chicago in 1952, and by 1956 he already had his own department store. At first they were along the Lake Street, but then they started moving to State Street when Potter Palmer, his former partner, started buying land along State Street up to the north. And Marshall Field had a very interesting approach to the whole business. He was studying his customers. And later Delia, who was his mistress, despite the marriage, was advising him, because ladies had nothing to do. They were sitting at home, they had kids who were taken care of by nannies. The only role of the ladies was just to make life beautiful, to decorate their homes, to dress themselves, to go talk, drink tea, and they didn't really have any place to do that. But Marshall Field came with this solution. So he created a place for them to hang out together, to shop together, and gradually they were meeting more and more of their needs. At one point in Marshall Field, they even had a room for kids where they were taken care of while the women were shopping. And gradually this became not only high society ladies shopping, but also lower level ladies. The store burned twice. It was renovated, remodeled many times, and built. Now it's taking the whole block. And many things were going on there. For example, in 1886, we had Haymarket Affair, when on the square, a terrorist threw a bomb and it killed a few policemen. And there was a shooting. Some people were killed wounded in the crowd. People were protesting, and 8 men were convicted of this crime, although none of them actually did it. Some were not even in town, but they were convicted as for the plot. Marshall Field was the main guy who basically stirred up the public opinion. He brought all his friends together to convict these people, although most of them were innocent. And why is that? The workers, all these labor movements were getting steam in Chicago. They had demonstrations right in front of Marshall Field's office, right in front of his store. And he just hated their guts. They were demanding 8-hour work day. And he couldn't understand how is it possible. He was working as a farm boy at first. He was working for 18 hours a day sometimes, but normally about 12, 14 hours. To him it was just unthinkable how you can demand 8-hour days. I mean, it's just lazy. He did everything possible just to make newspapers write about this terrorism act like something appalling. And in the grand scheme of things, that's why you didn't have a communist revolution in America. You had it in Russia, but not here, because the public opinion stirred by Marshall Field was so against all these labor activists, against all these anarchists and everything else. That was his role, so I guess we should thank him for this. Marshall Field was only able to officially marry his darling when Delia's husband died. And when his wife died. But unfortunately, they only were happy for 6 months, because he was already getting old by then, and his son was killed under very strange circumstances. So he never recovered from this trauma, and 6 months later he died himself. But their romantic story will ever be in the literature, in this novel, and in many, many other novels, because there are about 2,000 books written about Chicago by different authors, those who lived here, those who live elsewhere, foreigners. And another interesting role of Marshall Fields was that bookstore. That bookstore they had on the 3rd floor was very, very innovative. At one point they had an elephant there to celebrate a children's book about elegant elephant. And they got some circus elephant named Judy, and she loved it. She loved all this attention. People were signing, taking pictures in front of her. But then she didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay there. She came easily in this cargo elevator, but never wanted to leave. So at one point she ran loose, and they found her in the department of rugs. She was sitting on the pile of oriental rugs. They had to build some sort of platform along the stairs to get her out, because otherwise she wouldn't just go back to this elevator, no way. very famous people were signing books there, like Amelia Earhart and Gertrude Stein. Gertrude Stein is another person who is fascinating, although I cannot read her books, and I don't think anybody can, but okay, I need to shut up, sorry. But when you go to Marshall Fields next time, go to the 7th floor. There's a little corner with a history. You can get some glimpses, some old photos, some descriptions, a photo of Marshall Fields, and some information, but it's one of those fascinating places which is like my crocodile's stomach. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Nonna.